Imagine stepping into a dimly lit cottage, deep in the heart of Yorkshire's ancient woods, where the air hums with the weight of centuries-old secrets. The only light comes from a single flickering candle, casting long, dancing shadows across walls lined with crumbling manuscripts. At the center of it all, a young scholar named Elara leans over a weathered parchment, her fingers trembling as they trace the cryptic words of Mother Shipton, the legendary seer whose prophecies have mystified and haunted generations. There's something unsettling about these texts, something that whispers of danger, of forces best left undisturbed, and yet Alara can't turn away. Whether you're joining us under the glow of a midnight moon or the soft light of dawn, we'd love to know where in the world are you listening from tonight. Let us know in the comments below and tell us what time your journey into this enigmatic tale begins. Mother Shipton's name alone conjures images of shadowy forests, of prophecies spoken in riddles that seem to unfold across time. Born in the late 15th century, she was said to possess an otherworldly gift, an ability to peer into the future with startling accuracy. But who was she, really? A wise woman, a witch, or something far more mysterious? Her predictions range from the rise of great cities to the fall of kings, and some claim her words still echo in the events of our modern world. Yet for all her fame, much of her life remains shrouded in legend, her true story buried beneath layers of myth and fear. Tonight, we're stepping into that shadowy realm, unraveling the threads of her prophecies to uncover what truths or terrors they might hold. There's a reason these texts have survived for centuries, a reason they still send chills down the spines of those who dare to read them. Some say disturbing them awakens something that was meant to stay asleep. So light a candle, settle in, and prepare to journey with us into the heart of one of history's most haunting mysteries. Because this isn't just a story, it's an invitation to explore the unknown, to question what lies beyond the edges of our understanding. And who knows, by the end, you might find yourself glancing over your shoulder, wondering if the shadows around you are just tricks of the light, or something far more unsettling. The candlelight flickers violently as Alara's breath catches in her throat. There, buried beneath layers of faded ink and cryptic symbols, lies a prophecy she's never seen before, one that speaks of a darkness rising with the next lunar eclipse, just 3 nights away. The words seem to pulse on the parchment, as if alive, warning of floods that swallow homes, skies that weep fire, and a silence so deep it chokes the breath from the living. Her hands tremble as she pieces together the fragments, each line mirroring the nightmares she's endured for weeks, the same visions now creeping into waking life. Strange things have been stirring in the village, whispers carried on the wind. Sheep vanish without a trace, their pens left undisturbed, as if the earth itself swallowed them whole. The old women at the market clutch their shawls tighter, muttering about shadows that move against the wind. Even the children speak in hushed tones of a figure watching from the forest, its eyes gleaming like polished obsidian. At first, Elara dismissed it as superstition, but now the prophecy binds these omens together with terrible clarity. A cold dread settles in her chest as she weighs her next move. The village elders would scoff, calling it the ramblings of a frightened girl, too lost in her books to see reason. Yet if she stays silent and the prophecy unfolds, their scorn will be the least of her regrets. but to act alone, to step into the forest where the shadows gather, armed only with crumbling parchment and a gut-deep certainty. The thought sends a shiver down her spine. Every instinct screams that some truths are better left buried, that certain doors, once opened, cannot be closed. But if the eclipse comes and the village falls while she stood by, could she live with that? The weight of the decision presses down like a stone, and for the first time, Alara understands why so many before her chose to look away. Alara's footsteps echo through the hollow silence of the village hall as she approaches the council table, clutching the fragile parchment like a lifeline. The air reeks of pipe smoke and skepticism. The elder's face is lined with deep-set frowns as she recounts the prophecy, the eclipse, the fires, the choking silence. Before she can finish, the grizzled miller slams his tankard down, ale sloshing onto the oak. Enough of this madness, he barks, his jowls trembling. First it's missing sheep, now it's doom from the skies. Next you'll claim Mother Shipton herself is haunting our pastures. A ripple of uneasy laughter follows, but Alara notices how their eyes dart to the blackened windows, how their fingers tighten around their cups. Only one man sits motionless at the far end of the table, Thaddeus, the stooped scholar who once taught Alara to decipher runes before the village deemed his studies unwholesome. His gnarled hands rest atop his cane, his gaze fixed on her with an intensity that makes her pulse quicken. When the council votes to burn the parchment and ban further talk of curses, Thaddeus doesn't protest. But as the others shuffle out into the twilight, he lingers, tracing a hidden symbol onto the table's edge with his thumb. A crescent moon cradling an eye, the same mark etched into the margins of Mother Shipton's text. That night, Elara kneels by her hearth, feeding the prophecy's crumbling edges to the flames as ordered, but the fire recoils. Not a single ember touches the parchment. Outside, the wind howls through the thatch, carrying a whisper that raises the hairs on her neck. A child's voice, singing a nursery rhyme Thaddeus used to hum. The words twist mid-verse into something darker. When the moon wears its shadow crown, the buried ones wake and walk among us. Dawn finds her at Thaddeus's cottage, where moth-eaten tapestries shroud walls crammed with forbidden texts. He doesn't feign surprise. They called me a fool when the river turned black in '89. He murmurs, stroking the skull of a raven perched on his chair. But the bones never lie. From under the floorboards, he produces a lead box sealed with wax. Inside, a lock of silver hair coils around a scrap of vellum. Mother Shipton's own hand, detailing the same eclipse, the same waking darkness. She wasn't just predicting the future, Thaddeus rasps. She was warning us about something that's been waiting, and it knows we're digging up its secrets. The weight of the choice settles over Alara like a burial shroud. To walk away means abandoning the village to a fate they refuse to believe in. To stay and fight means standing against both the storm and the very people she hopes to save, with only a disgraced scholar and a box of whispers as allies. Somewhere beyond the forest, a branch snaps, not from the wind, not from any animal she's ever known. The floorboards creak under Alara's boots as she follows Thaddeus down a narrow staircase, hidden behind his bookshelf, the air thickening with the scent of aged parchment and damp earth. The flickering lantern in his hand casts jagged shadows across the walls, revealing symbols carved into the stone, some so old the edges have softened with time. At the bottom lies a chamber that steals her breath. Shelves groan under the weight of leather-bound tomes, their spines etched with titles in languages long forgotten. In the center, a work table holds a map of the village, dotted with pins and threaded with red string, as if marking some invisible pattern only Thaddeus can see. His voice is barely a whisper as he runs a trembling finger along a yellowed page. They burned her books, called them heresy, he says, but a few of us knew better. Knew to hide them. He flips open a ledger, its margins crammed with frantic notes, dates, weather patterns, livestock deaths, all aligning with Mother Shipton's darkest prophecies. The eclipse isn't just an omen, he insists. It's a key, a door left ajar centuries ago, waiting for the right moment to swing wide. From a rusted chest, he withdraws a bundle wrapped in black cloth. Unfolding it reveals a dagger with a blade of obsidian, its hilt wound with silver wire, shaped like thorned vines. The ritual is simple, Thaddeus explains, though his eyes betray doubt. At the stroke of midnight, when the moon is fullest, this must be plunged into the heart of the old oak at the forest's edge. The tree's roots are said to touch the place where the darkness sleeps. He hesitates, then adds, but the dagger demands a price. Whoever wields it, their fate becomes bound to the curse. Alara's stomach twists. The weight of the choice is crushing. Trust a man the village calls a madman. Risk her life on a ritual ripped from a forbidden text. Or run and leave everyone to a fate they refuse to see coming. Outside, the wind moans through the trees, carrying with it the distant, panic bleating of sheep. Thaddeus doesn't flinch. They feel it too, he murmurs. The shadows are already stirring. A crash echoes from upstairs. A book falling, or something far heavier. Thaddeus's hand clamps onto Alara's wrist, his grip feverish. There's no time left to doubt. The eclipse comes at midnight tomorrow. Decide now, do you stand with the blind, or with those who see the storm coming? The lantern gutters, plunging the chamber into near darkness. Somewhere above, a floorboard groans under an unseen weight. Not a question of if the darkness is coming anymore. Only who will face it. The obsidian dagger feels unnaturally cold in Alara's grip, as if it's drinking in the warmth from her skin. Thaddeus kneels beside an ancient chest, pulling out a tattered map marked with a single red X near the ruins of Knaresborough's petrifying well, the very place where Mother Shipton's bones are said to rest beneath the waters. The dagger is only half the key, he mutters, tracing the route with a shaky finger. Buried deep in the cave behind the well lies a silver amulet, forged from a meteorite that fell the night she died. Without it, the ritual is just a knife in the dark. Elara's breath hitches. She's heard the stories, how the well turns objects to stone, how the cave walls whisper in voices not quite human. But it's the way Thaddeus hesitates before rolling up the map that chills her more. His hands, usually steady as a surgeon's when handling relics, tremble like leaves in a storm. You should know, he says, not meeting her eyes. The last scholar who sought the amulet. His lantern was found still lit at the cave's entrance. His footprints led in. None led out. A silence stretches between them, thick enough to carve. Outside, an owl cries too close, too shrill. Elara tightens her cloak, sudden understanding dawning. Thaddeus isn't just afraid of the curse. He's afraid of failing her. The realization knots in her chest. This frail old man, ostracized for decades as a lunatic, is willing to walk into the dark one last time for a village that spat on his name. She reaches for the map, her fingers brushing his. Then we go together at first light, she says, voice steadier than she feels. If the cave takes us, at least we'll spoil its appetite for the rest of them. Thaddeus barks a laugh, but it dies quickly as the wind rattles the shutters. Not wind, Alara realizes. Something scraping against the wood, deliberate. Patient, Thaddeus blows out the lantern, plunging them into darkness. Rest while you can, he whispers. Tomorrow, we dig up a ghost. The scraping stops. The air smells suddenly of wet earth and rust, and beneath it all, faint but unmistakable, the scent of lightning, as if a storm is gathering deep underground. The forest swallows them whole the moment they step beneath its gnarled canopy. Moonlight filters through the twisted branches in jagged slivers, painting the path ahead in ghostly silver and ink-black void. Every crunch of dry leaves underfoot sounds too loud, as if the trees themselves are holding their breath. Thaddeus moves like a shadow ahead of Alara, his cane barely disturbing the undergrowth, but she stumbles over roots that seem to shift the moment she looks away. Then come the whispers. At first, they could be wind, a hiss through the brambles, a sigh in the high branches, but soon the voices take shape. Fragments of Alara's childhood, lullabies, half-remembered warnings from her grandmother, even Thaddeus's own lectures on ancient rites, all spoken in tones that aren't quite human. They coil around her, tugging at memories best left buried. Ignore them, Thaddeus mutters without turning. The forest feeds on doubt. It wants you to hesitate. A flicker of movement darts between the oaks, too tall to be an animal, too fluid to be a man. Alara's pulse hammers in her throat. The dagger at her belt feels heavier, its cold seeping through the leather sheath. She forces her gaze forward, focusing on the back of Thaddeus's thread, bare cloak, but the whispers sharpen, now forming words that crawl under her skin. You'll fail like the others, the trees seem to murmur. The dark remembers every name it's tasted. Thaddeus halts abruptly, gripping her shoulder. His fingers are ice. Look, ahead, the path splits around a massive oak, its trunk split down the middle like a gaping mouth. Between the splintered wood, something glints. A child's doll, its porcelain face cracked, one glass eye reflecting the moon. Elara knows that doll. It belonged to the miller's daughter, lost in the woods 2 summers past. The sight sends a jolt through her, but Thaddeus tightens his grip. This is the test, he says. Turn back now, and the forest lets you leave. Go forward, and it will hunt you the rest of your days. Alara's breath clouds in the air despite the lack of cold. Somewhere deep in the woods, a branch snaps, then another, closer. The doll's remaining eye rolls toward them with a faint click. Thaddeus doesn't flinch. Choose, he says softly. She reaches for the dagger. The moment her fingers brush the hilt, the whispers cut off as if severed. Silence falls, thick and suffocating. Then, from the split oak, a single drop of dark liquid wells up and drips onto the doll's face. Not sap, not water. Elara steps forward. The forest exhales around them, the path ahead clearing as if unseen hands have parted the brambles. Thaddeus nods once, his expression grim but proud. Good, he says. Now it knows you mean to fight. The last stretch of their journey lies ahead, where the trees grow thicker and the moonlight cannot reach. Neither mentions the wet, ragged breathing that follows them just beyond sight. The earth beneath the petrifying well exhales a mist so thick it clings to Alara's skin like cobwebs. The ruins loom ahead, their moss-crusted stones humming with a vibration that sets her teeth on edge. Thaddeus kneels at the edge of the water, his hands splayed over the surface, murmuring words that make the liquid ripple against its own current. Then silence. The mist coils into a figure towering above them, its form woven from moonlight and shadow. No face, yet Alara feels its gaze pierce straight through her ribs. Thaddeus bows his head, pressing his wrinkled forehead to the damp earth. Keeper of the veil, he rasps, we seek only to mend what was broken. The spirit doesn't move, but the air thickens with the scent of burning sage and something older. Iron, perhaps, or the metallic tang of lightning. Then, with a sound like tearing parchment, it turns toward Alara. A pressure builds behind her eyes, sharp as splintered glass. Suddenly, she's 8 years old again, watching her sister vanish into the reeds by the riverbank, her own hand frozen mid-reach. The vision fractures. Now she's standing over Thaddeus's lifeless body in the forest, the dagger slick in her grip, his blood black as the amulet they failed to claim. Every failure, every secret shame floods her mind in a relentless tide. The spirit isn't just testing her resolve, it's drowning her in it. Alara claws at the ground, her nails filling with dirt. The visions twist darker, her village in ruins, the eclipse hanging like a bloodied coin overhead, and worst of all, the creeping certainty that she's too late, that she's always been too late. A scream builds in her throat, but what comes out is a whisper, ragged but unwavering. I choose to stand. The pressure snaps, the mist dissipates, leaving only a shallow depression in the soil where the spirit stood. Thaddeus exhales shakily, but his eyes gleam with something like pride. It's here, he murmurs, brushing away centuries of packed earth. The amulet lies nestled in the roots, its silver surface etched with veins of cobalt, a captured piece of the night sky. As Elara lifts it, the metal doesn't chill her fingers. It burns, not with heat, but with a pulse like a heartbeat, slow and deliberate. Somewhere in the woods, a chorus of ravens takes flight, their cries stitching the twilight with warning. The Guardian's test is passed. The real trial begins at moonrise. The path back to the village feels different. The trees lean away from them now, their branches twisted like fingers recoiling from fire. Alara clutches the amulet, its pulse syncing with her heartbeat, a steady reminder of what they've risked to retrieve it. Thaddeus walks ahead, his cane striking the earth with odd precision, as if counting steps. She doesn't notice the change at first, not until his shoulders stiffen and his breath hitches mid-stride. Then, without warning, he whirls, his cane swinging in a sharp arc. It catches her across the ribs, sending her sprawling into the dirt. The amulet flies from her grip, skittering across the roots like a living thing. Thaddeus snatches it up, his hands trembling not from fear, but from something far worse, hunger. His eyes, once sharp with weary wisdom, now glitter like broken glass in the moonlight. "Forgive me, child," he murmurs, though his voice holds no remorse. "But you were never meant to understand. The eclipse isn't a curse to be broken. It's a door to be opened. And I intend to walk through." Elara's lungs burn as she struggles to rise. The betrayal cuts deeper than the pain. This man, her mentor, the only one who believed in the prophecy's truth, had been weaving his own lies all along. "You're wrong," she gasps. Mother Shipton warned of the darkness. You read her words. Thaddeus barks a laugh, sharp and hollow. "Oh, I read them, every last scrap." "But you missed the real lesson, girl. Prophecies aren't just warnings, they're invitations." He presses the amulet to his chest, and the cobalt veins within it flare, casting his face in eerie blue light. The eclipse grants power to those brave enough to take it. Immortality, knowledge beyond mortal ken. Why would I waste that on saving sheep and fools? A gust of wind howls through the trees, carrying the scent of ozone and something metallic. Alara's fingers close around the dagger's hilt, but Thaddeus is already backing away, his grin widening as the first sliver of shadow creeps across the moon. "Run home if you like," he calls. "Tell them the storm's coming, or stay and watch what happens when a man stops fearing the dark." The forest seems to hold its breath as he vanishes into the gloom, the amulet's glow fading like a dying star. Alara staggers to her feet, her mind racing. The ritual was never about sealing the curse. It was about stealing its power, and Thaddeus isn't just a traitor. He's the key the darkness has been waiting for. The dagger hums in her grip, its edge catching the moonlight. One choice remains: chase him into the heart of the eclipse, or let the village burn. Somewhere in the distance, a bell tolls the midnight watch, ringing too soon. The sky darkens, the wind stills, and deep in the woods, something begins to laugh. The eclipse looms like a black sun, creeping across the sky, its edges tinged with an unnatural rust-red hue. Alara's boots pound against the dirt path, her lungs burning as she races toward the village, her mind clawing through every scrap of prophecy she's ever studied. They are buried in the margins of Mother Shipton's darkest text. A single line surfaces in her memory, the serpent's tooth undone by the raven's breath. Nonsense to anyone else, but to her, it sparks a desperate hope. The apothecary's ledger listed raven's breath just last week, a rare moss that grows only on gravestones struck by lightning. The village square is eerily still, the usual bustle replaced by hushed clusters of villagers muttering over steaming mugs. Their eyes track Elara as she weaves through the stalls, their whispers sharp as knives. There's the scholar's girl, brought bad luck with her books, she did. The miller's wife spits into the dirt as she passes, and Alara catches the glint of something silver tucked into the woman's apron, a charm against the evil eye. They feel it too, the weight of the coming night. They just don't know why. The apothecary's shop reeks of dried herbs and vinegar, the shelves cluttered with jars of murky tinctures. Old man Hargrove peers at her over his spectacles, his gnarled fingers pausing over a pestle. "You're late for warnings, girl," he grunts, nodding to the window where the eclipsed moon casts long shadows. The dark's already walking. Alara doesn't waste time with explanations. She slams a shaking hand on the counter. "The raven's breath. Where is it?" Hargrove's brows knit together, but he hobbles to the back room without argument, returning with a small lead box. Inside, a tuft of iridescent black moss pulses faintly, as if breathing. "Took this off young Micah's grave after the storm last autumn," he murmurs. Never seen moss grow toward lightning before. He hesitates, his grip tightening. "You're meddling with things that bite back, girl." A distant scream slices through the night, followed by a chorus of barking dogs. Elara doesn't look back as she snatches the box, tossing a handful of coins onto the counter. The ingredients are nothing without the ritual. A slash of the dagger, the amulet's power inverted, the raven's breath burned to ash and scattered against the wind. But time is bleeding away. The eclipse isn't just coming, it's here, and Thaddeus is out there, his shadow growing longer with every passing second. She bursts into the street, just as the first true wave of darkness rolls over the village, swallowing the rooftops whole. The air hums with static, the hairs on her arms standing on end. Somewhere beyond the tree line, a deep, resonant thud shakes the ground, like the footfall of something immense. The villagers scatter, their fear finally overtaking their suspicion. Alara clutches the moss to her chest and runs toward the sound. The ritual demands the heart of the storm. And the storm, it seems, has come to meet her halfway. The apothecary's shop smells of dried lavender and something deeper, older, like the scent of a long-sealed tomb, cracked open for the first time in centuries. Agnes's hands hover over the herb jars, her fingers gnarled as tree roots, but her eyes are sharp as flint. When Alara gasps out her request, the old woman goes utterly still, then lets out a slow breath that makes the candles gutter. "So it's you," she murmurs, more to herself than to Alara, "the one the dreams promised." From beneath the counter, Agnes produces a small wooden box, carved with the same crescent and eye symbol Thaddeus once traced. Inside lies a sprig of raven's breath, its black fronds shimmering with an unnatural iridescence. But when Alara reaches for it, Agnes slams the lid shut. "This isn't a gift," she says, her voice low and urgent. "It's a trade. The ritual demands a memory, one that anchors you to this world, something precious. Something you'd grieve to lose." Alara's throat tightens. The first memory that surfaces is her mother's voice, singing the lullaby she'd hummed on winter nights, the one about the girl who outwitted the moon. The last words she'd whispered before the fever took her. "Look to the cracks in the world, love, that's where the light gets in." To surrender that would be to lose the last living piece of her. Agnes sees the hesitation. Her expression softens, but her grip on the box doesn't waver. "I know the cost," she says. "I paid it once myself, gave up the sound of my sister's laughter to break a curse on this village. 50 years gone, and I still wake some nights reaching for it like a missing limb." She leans closer, her breath smelling of bitter herbs. But ask yourself, what use are memories if there's no world left to hold them? Outside, the eclipse's shadow swallows the last sliver of moonlight. The village bell begins to toll, each ring too slow, too heavy, as if the air itself has thickened. Somewhere in the distance, a child wails, not in fear, but in a voice that's all wrong, a voice that grates. Agnes doesn't flinch. "Choose now," she says, pressing the box into Alara's trembling hands. The dark won't wait. The raven's breath pulses in its prison, warm as a living thing. Alara closes her eyes. She hears her mother's song one last time, clear as crystal. Then she opens them, and it's gone. The lullaby, the words, even the shape of her mother's face, all vanished, leaving only a hollow where love once lived. Agnes nods, her own eyes wet. "It's done," she whispers. "Now run." The box springs open of its own accord, the moss writhing like a creature awakened. It twines around Alara's wrist, its touch burning cold, and in that instant, she understands the true cost of magic. Not just a memory, but the hole it leaves behind, a wound that will never quite heal. The door bursts open on a gust of wind reeking of turned earth and copper. The ritual can begin, but so too has the hunt. The sky splits open with a sound like tearing parchment as the eclipse swallows the last remnants of daylight. An unnatural wind surges through the village, snatching shutters from hinges and sending chickens screeching into the air. But it's not the wind that chills Alara's blood. It's the voices riding it, whispers in a language that twists her stomach, syllables that slither between the cobblestones and coil around her ankles. She spots him at the heart of the standing stones, their surfaces now glowing with veins of cobalt light. Thaddeus stands arms outstretched, the amulet hovering above his palms, pulsing in time with the trembling earth. Shadows writhe at his feet like living things, stretching toward the villagers' homes with hungry deliberation. But it's his face that stops her cold. His eyes are gone. In their place, twin pools of starless dark, dripping something thick and silver down his cheeks. The dagger burns in her grip, the raven's breath moss writhing against her wrist, as if trying to escape. Every instinct screams to run, but the memory of her mother's stolen lullaby howls louder. She lunges forward, just as Thaddeus's chanting reaches a crescendo, his voice no longer his own. It booms from the ground itself, from the twisted oaks, from the bellies of the crows now circling overhead. The first shadow detaches from the mass and slithers toward the miller's cottage, its form flickering between a wolf's snout and a child's grasping fingers. Alara's boots skid on loose stones as she reaches the circle's edge. The air here is thick as syrup, pressing against her ribs like a vise. Thaddeus doesn't turn, but his lips curve into a smile too wide for any human face. Late as always, he murmurs, though the words come from the amulet now, vibrating in her bones. Watch closely, girl. This is what truth looks like when it's set free. The ground beneath her heaves, cracks spiderweb outward, exhaling a stench of rotting petals and wet iron. Something moves in the fissures. Not worms, not roots, but shapes that flit just beyond sight, their edges refusing to solidify. The amulet's glow intensifies, searing her retinas, and for one horrifying instant, Alara sees it, the outline of a door forming in the air behind Thaddeus, its edges stitched together from lightning and weeping shadows. It's opening, not all the way, not yet, but with every heartbeat, the crack widens. She has no plan left, no clever words, only the dagger, the moss, and the hollow where her mother's voice used to live. Gripping both, she throws herself into the circle. The shadows shriek. The earth bucks like a spooked horse, and Alara plunges the blade straight through the amulet's heart. The moment the raven's breath hits the flames, the fire doesn't just roar, it screams. A column of blue-white light erupts skyward, tearing through the unnatural dark of the eclipse like a blade through silk. Thaddeus's outstretched hands freeze mid-gesture, his stolen power flickering like a guttering candle. For the first time since the ritual began, fear flickers in those bottomless eyes. The amulet fractures with a sound like breaking ice, its cobalt veins pulsing once, twice, before exploding into a shower of silver shards. Each fragment burns where it lands, searing the earth with tiny, smoking craters. The shadows don't just retreat, they convulse, their forms unraveling like smoke caught in a gale. The thing that had been wearing Thaddeus's face lets out a wail that shakes the standing stones, his body contorting as the stolen power tears free of him. His skin cracks like dried parchment, revealing not blood, not bone, but a yawning void beneath, a glimpse of the hungry dark he tried to leash. He reaches for Alara, his fingers elongating into clawed shadows, but the ritual's backlash is already pulling him apart. "You fool," he rasps, his voice now a chorus of whispers. "You've only delayed the inevitable. The door will open, it's written." Then the eclipse passes. The moon's pale face emerges, whole and unmarked, its light falling across a village that seems to exhale all at once. The cracks in the earth seal themselves with soft, wet sighs. The wind carries away the last tatters of unnatural mist, and Thaddeus, what's left of him, collapses into a heap of ashen robes, his body withered to little more than a husk. The silence that follows is so complete, so heavy, it presses against Elara's eardrums like the weight of deep water. She stumbles forward, her knees giving out halfway to the stones. The dagger lies nearby, its obsidian blade now dull and lifeless. The raven's breath is gone, consumed by the flames, along with the last echo of her mother's voice. But the village still stands. The shadows have retreated, and overhead, the stars blink back into existence, one by one, as if nothing had ever been amiss. A hand touches her shoulder. Elara jerks away, half expecting another horror, but it's only Agnes, her face gaunt with exhaustion. The old woman doesn't speak. She doesn't need to. Together, they watch the eastern horizon lighten with the first hints of dawn. Somewhere in the distance, a rooster crows tentative at first, then louder, as if testing whether the world is truly safe again. Alara closes her eyes. The prophecy is broken. The darkness is banished. But as the wind stirs the ashes at her feet, she can't shake the feeling that something is still watching. Waiting, and far beneath the earth, in a place no mortal was ever meant to find, a door that should have stayed shut creaks, ever so slightly on its hinges. Dawn spills over the village like honey, over bread golden, slow, and impossibly ordinary. Shutters creak open, smoke curls from chimneys. A milkmaid hums as she crosses the square, her pail swinging, utterly unaware of the teeth that had snapped shut just hours before, missing her world by inches. Elara watches from the shadow of the standing stones, her fingers tracing the fresh scar on her palm, where the dagger's hilt had burned its final warning. The hollow in her chest yawns wider with each breath. She can't remember the tune her mother used to sing, only that there was one, like the outline of a shadow after the candle's blown out. Agnes finds her there at midday, kneeling beside what's left of the ritual circle. The old woman doesn't offer empty comforts. Instead, she presses a cup of something bitter into Alara's hands, a tea steeped from yarrow and rue, herbs for mourning. "They won't thank you," Agnes says, nodding toward the villagers hauling water from the well, laughing over some shared jest. Ignorance is a kinder master than truth. And she's right. When Alara passes the baker's boy, he grins and tosses her a warm roll, as if it's any other day. The miller's wife eyes her with the same old suspicion, muttering about unnatural girls and their scribbling. No one notices the way the ravens huddle silent in the elms, or how the petrifying well's waters run clearer than they have in decades. No one but Thaddeus. They find him at dusk, curled in the roots of the great oak, his hands clutching at his temples as if to hold his mind together. The scholar who once deciphered celestial maps now whimpers at the sight of his own shadow. Agnes bundles him into her cottage without a word, but Alara sees the truth in his twitching fingers, the way his lips shape fragments of the ritual's verses. The darkness didn't just use him, it hollowed him. That night, Elara climbs to the roof of the old scriptorium, the village spread below her like a quilt of candlelight. The prophecies had been real, the danger had been real, and against all odds, she'd rewritten an ending centuries in the making. The pride is there, yes, a small, steady flame, but it's the emptiness that sings louder. Somewhere in the woods, an owl cries, and for the first time, she wonders if the cost was always part of the bargain. Not a flaw in the magic, but its very nature. To stand against the dark, you must offer up your light. A breeze stirs the pages of the open book beside her. Mother Shipton's last surviving text, salvaged from Thaddeus's ruins. The ink on one page glistens wetly, though the storm passed hours ago. Fresh words coil across the parchment, as if scratched by an unseen hand. The door remembers the hand that turned the key. Elara's breath catches. The village sleeps on, oblivious, but high above, the moon watches, and far below, in the deepest crevices of the earth, something scrapes softly against stone. Waiting, always waiting. Agnes's fingers tighten around Elara's wrist as she pulls her into the apothecary's back room, where the air smells of crushed wormwood and secrets too heavy for daylight. The old woman's usual sharpness softens for just a moment, long enough for Elara to see the glint of something like pity in her eyes. You think this is over? Agnes rasps, her voice barely louder than the creak of the settling shelves. Child, you've barely scratched the surface. With a grunt, she drags a stool to the far wall, where a tapestry of the zodiac hangs slightly askew. Beneath it, the floorboard yields with a groan, revealing a cavity stuffed with oilcloth bundles. The first bundle unwraps to a ledger older than the village itself, its pages brittle as moth wings. Agnes handles it like live embers. Mother Shipton didn't just predict floods and kings. She murmurs, tracing a line of ink that shimmers oddly in the lamplight. She mapped the turning points, places where the world thins, where doors might open for those who know how to knock. Her finger stops on a sketch of a standing stone, crowned with ravens, its surface carved with the same crescent and eye symbol that haunts Elara's dreams. There are others like you, scattered, unready, but the threads are pulling taut again. Elara's breath catches. The hollow in her chest, where her mother's voice once lived, aches like a fresh wound. Why me? The question is raw, stripped bare. Agnes doesn't answer at first. Instead, she presses a cold, smooth object into Elara's palm, a river polished stone with a hole worn through its center. Because you paid the price, she says simply, and the dark remembers its debts. Outside, the wind picks up, carrying the scent of rain and distant wood smoke. Through the warped window pane, the first stars blink awake. Agnes's next words are quieter, almost lost beneath the creak of the settling house. I can teach you to rid the signs, to walk the edges without falling in, but make no mistake, this path won't end with quaint village heroics. The world's older and stranger than you've been led to believe. Elara turns the stone over in her fingers. The hole at its center frames a single star, flickering as if it's breathing. She thinks of Thaddeus's hollowed-out eyes, of the door in the earth that hadn't fully closed. The curiosity that coils in her gut now isn't the naive hunger of a scholar chasing puzzles. It's something sharper, darker, a recognition. Agnes sees it too. Her smile is all teeth. Ah, there she is. Somewhere beyond the village, an owl cries twice, then falls silent. The stone in Alara's hand grows warm. The cottage smells of dried ink and old paper, a scent that once meant safety, but now carries the weight of secrets. Alara kneels by the hearth, stacking the scattered fragments of her research parchment scraps, half-burnt candle stubs, the cracked quill she'd used to scribble frantic notes during the storm. Her hands don't shake anymore. That's the first thing she notices. Where fear once coiled in her gut, there's only a steady, simmering resolve. The hollow where her mother's voice should be still aches, but the wound has hardened, like scar tissue over a blade's kiss. By moonlight, she begins to write, not the careful, measured script of a scholar cataloging folklore, but the jagged strokes of someone carving a warning into stone. Every detail pours onto the page, the way Thaddeus's shadow had stretched too long, the taste of iron in the air when the amulet shattered, the exact pitch of the unseen thing that had laughed from the cracks in the earth. She writes until her fingers cramp, until the ink smears with something that might be sweat or tears. These words won't end up forgotten in some dusty archive. They'll be hidden where only the right eyes will find them, where the next fool brave enough to chase the truth can follow the trail. Dawn finds her slumped over the desk, her cheek pressed to a half-dried page. Outside, the village stirs the clatter of milk pails, the creak of the mill's great wheel, but there's a new rhythm beneath the familiar sounds. When she steps into the square, the baker's boy doesn't just toss her a roll. He bows his head, just slightly, as if to a warrior returned from battle. The miller's wife still crosses herself when Elara passes, but now there's a bundle of rosemary and salt tied to her door frame. Superstition, maybe, or the first flicker of understanding. Back in her cottage, Elara presses her palm to the soot-stained wall. The stones are warm, as if the hearth's embers have seeped into the very bones of the house. Or perhaps it's something else, the residue of magic, the echo of choices that can't be unmade. She'll need allies, more books, a way to map the thinning places Agnes spoke of. But first, she'll sleep, not the fitful doze of the hunted, but the deep, dreamless rest of someone who's stared into the abyss and learned to blink first. The last thing she sees before the darkness takes her is the raven perched on her windowsill, its beak parting as if to speak. No sound comes, not yet. But the message is clear enough. The door may be closed, but the hinges still groan, and the thing on the other side, it's learning to knock. The candle gutters suddenly, though no draft stirs the air of Alara's cramped study. Shadows leap across the walls like startled birds as she leans closer to the brittle manuscript, her fingers hovering just above the ink. The words swim before her eyes not from fatigue, but because the letters themselves seem to writhe on the page, rearranging into patterns she's never seen. Then, so soft it might have been the sigh of the quill against parchment, the voice comes, not from the room, not even from the text. It coils up from somewhere deeper, older, a sound like wind through a hollow tree. Prepare. Alara's breath sticks in her throat. She knows that cadence, the way the syllables curl at the edges like smoke. She's heard it before, in the half-dreams that plague her since the eclipse, in the rustle of ravens' wings when no birds are near. Mother Shipton's voice, but not as the villagers tell it, not the cackling crone of fireside tales. This is the voice of a woman who'd stared into the abyss and taken notes. The candle steadies, but the words on the page don't. They've settled into a new configuration, one that makes Alara's pulse hammer against her ribs. Not a prophecy of floods or fires this time, not even a warning, an invitation, or a summons. The ink sketches a map, no, a path leading to a place marked only by a spiral and a single word, not grass. Her hands shake as she traces the lines, not grass, the stubborn weed that chokes gardens, yes, but also the herb Agnes once called the seamstress's thread, used to stitch closed wounds, both flesh and spectral. A coincidence, unlikely, not in this new world where every rustle of leaves carries meaning, where the hollow in her chest throbs in time with the phases of the moon. A log shifts in the hearth with a sound like knuckles cracking. Elara whirls, half expecting to see Thaddeus's hollowed face in the flames, or worse, the thing that wore him like a cloak. But the fire burns ordinary and bright. Ordinary, she almost laughs. There's no such thing anymore, not since she learned that prophecies aren't fixed stars but living things, twisting and biting in the hands of those who try to hold them. The map glows faintly now, the spiral pulsing like a slow heartbeat. Alara knows better than to ignore such signs. The last time she hesitated, an entire village nearly became a feast for the dark. But this feels different, not a scream from the future, but a whisper, a thread tugged by fingers she can't see. She reaches for her satchel, already mentally tallying supplies. Salt, iron nails, the last shred of raven's breath pressed between the pages of her journal. Preparation isn't just packing, though. It's steeling yourself for the moment the world cracks open again, and as the candlelight catches the silver scar winding around her wrist, the mark the dagger left when it chose her, Alara knows one truth with absolute certainty. The cracks are coming. Faster now, wider, and whatever waits on the other side, it's learning to speak her name. The first frost of the season coats the village in a brittle silver sheen when the stranger rides in. He moves like a man accustomed to silence, no jangle of spurs, no creak of saddle leather, just the muffled crunch of hooves on frozen earth. By the time Elara notices him from her window, he's already dismounted, his cloak the color of old blood blending into the dusk. The villagers give him a wide berth, their breath steaming in hurried bursts as they scurry indoors. Even the dogs don't bark. They whine, low in their throats, and slink behind the water troughs. He doesn't ask for her by name, doesn't have to. His gaze finds Alara's window as if pulled by a thread, and when he extends his hand, the letter he holds seems to pulse faintly, like a heartbeat through parchment. The wax seal isn't just red, it's the deep crimson of a freshly split scab, stamped with a symbol that makes her fingers twitch. A crescent moon cradling a closed eye, the pupil replaced by a single thorn. The mark of the Shipton bloodline, but not from any branch she's ever studied. The moment the seal cracks, the air in the cottage shifts, not a draft. Not a chill, something deeper, as if the room itself has taken a step back. The ink on the page isn't faded or elegant like the old prophecies. It's sharp, almost frantic, the downstrokes scored deep into the paper, as though written with a dagger's tip. The storm comes not from sky or sea, but from the cracks you left unsealed. Elara's pulse stutters. The handwriting is her own, not the neat script of her journals, not even the rushed scrawl of her eclipse night notes. This is the jagged, desperate hand of someone writing with their last strength, and the date at the top, 3 days from now. Outside, the stranger hasn't moved. His hood shadows his face, but the set of his shoulders speaks of a patience that borders on hunger. He knows what the letter says, knows she'll follow. Because the final line isn't a warning or a riddle, it's a confession, inked in what might be rust or something darker. I open the door. I'm so sorry. The fire in the hearth gutters out, though the logs are fresh. The village bell tolls once, though no hand pulls the rope. And from the woods beyond the mill, a sound begins to rise, not howls, not whispers, but the terrible, grating rhythm of something vast and ancient drawing breath. The woods exhale a breath of damp earth and old secrets as Alara steps beyond the last gnarled oak, her boots sinking slightly into the moss. The weight of the past weeks presses against her ribs, not just the losses, but the terrible, shimmering clarity they've carved into her. Thaddeus's hollowed eyes, the amulet's dying scream, the way the village children now flinch when she passes, as if her shadow might swallow them whole. Yet beneath the grief, something else stirs a quiet, relentless pulse, like the heartbeat of a creature waking from a long sleep. Agnes's parting gift hangs heavy around her neck, a pendant of knotted grass and silver, its center holding a single drop of the petrifying well's water, frozen mid-fall. To remind you, the old woman had said, her voice roughened by years of whispered warnings, that some doors must stay shut, and others, well, they'll open whether you're ready or not. The stranger's letter burns in Elara's pocket, its words etched into her skin like a brand. Her own handwriting, her own failure, yet somehow still ahead of her, waiting to be lived. A twig snaps to her left, not the careless crunch of a deer or the scuttle of a fox. This sound is deliberate, hungry. Elara doesn't turn. She knows better now than to acknowledge the things that call from the edges of sight. Instead, she reaches for the dagger at her belt, not the obsidian blade, lost in the ritual's backlash, but a new one, forged from the melted remains of the amulet. It thrums in her grip, warm as living flesh. The trees ahead sway though the air is still. Shadows coil at their roots, darker than they were a moment ago. Thicker, Elara exhales slowly. This is the truth no prophecy ever told her. The unseen world isn't some distant realm of monsters and magic. It's here, woven into every breath, every silence between heartbeats. And it's been watching her far longer than she's been watching back. She takes another step, then another. The path ahead isn't marked, but her feet know the way, not toward safety, not toward home, but into the gathering dark. The wind rises, carrying the scent of lightning and something older, something that tastes of turned soil and rusted hinges. Behind her, the village bell tolls once, a sound that lingers too long in the air. Ahead, the first raven calls. Elara smiles, sharp as the dagger in her hand. Let the prophecies come. Let the doors creak open. She's no longer the scholar who feared the dark. She's the storm that walks into it, and the dark, it had better learn to fear her back.